The Galactic Council Chamber was the most powerful room in the galaxy. Tall, shining pillars reached into the sky, and the floor sparkled with rare minerals collected from hundreds of conquered worlds. Thousands of alien leaders sat in curved seats, each species dressed in their finest robes or armor, representing the proud and ancient civilizations of the stars. In the center, surrounded by cold stares and silent whispers, stood a single human. Ambassador Riz Mercer of Earth. He wore no fancy clothes, carried no weapons, and spoke in a calm and respectful tone. "We come with peace. We seek a seat in the council, not to rule, but to share knowledge, trade, and ensure balance in the galaxy." The chamber laughed, not politely, but mockingly. A three-eyed warlord from the Scorvian Empire sneered and said, "You come from a backwater planet with no history, no respect, and no power. What makes you think you deserve anything from us?" Others joined in, some laughing, some growling, others simply ignoring the human's words. Rise remained silent for a moment, looking around the massive room filled with ancient pride and cold arrogance. He then said something that changed the galaxy forever. "Do not mistake silence for weakness." With that, he stepped back, bowed slightly, and left the chamber without another word. The council was amused. They dismissed the warning as the final cry of a small, fragile species that had dared to dream too high. Earth was considered young and primitive compared to the older star empires. Their ships were small, their influence was limited, and their silence after the meeting was expected. The council did not notice that Earth's trade lines went quiet. They didn't care that the humans stopped responding to diplomatic messages. No one worried when all satellites around Earth turned inward, and no one paid attention to the massive energy signals detected around Sol. For a month, the galaxy was peaceful, but something felt off. Space stations near human territory reported strange sightings, dark ships moving through the shadows of planets, massive engines with no known design, and shapes so large they looked like moons, but moved like predators. One mining colony on the edge of human space sent a distress signal, claiming that an unknown fleet had passed silently by them, blocking all light from the stars. The signal ended mid-sentence. The council dismissed these reports as errors or pirate activity. After all, no one believed Earth had anything powerful enough to challenge even the smallest empire. Then the reports stopped completely. A deep silence covered the region near Earth. Outposts stopped responding. Patrol ships vanished. The stars, once alive with traffic and noise, became quiet near Sol. It was as if a shadow had swallowed everything human and left nothing behind. The council grew uneasy. They sent scouts to investigate, but none returned. The galaxy began to feel something it hadn't felt in generations: fear. Without warning, a message arrived on every communication channel across all council worlds. It was short and clear. You were warned. Earth does not seek war, but we do not accept humiliation. From this moment forward, we are no longer silent. The message ended with coordinates. They pointed to Ryak Prime, one of the Council's strongest military planets, protected by fleets and defense grids that had never been breached. The Council laughed again, though this time their voices were quieter. Still, they sent fleets to prepare for a show of power. They believed they would easily crush whatever Earth planned. But when the human ships arrived, everything changed. The dreadnoughts entered Ryak's orbit without a sound. No signals, no threats, no flashy announcements. They simply appeared, emerging from hyperspace like shadows with edges of steel. Towering and dark, they moved with slow confidence. Ryak's scanners couldn't identify them, and their targeting systems failed to lock on. Panic spread in the control rooms. Before orders could be given, the attack began. It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was terrifying. Precision weapons fired from long range. Giant lances of energy tore through defense stations. Kinetic projectiles, dropped from orbit, fell silently and hit with the force of small suns. In less than 10 minutes, Ryak's proud fleet was dust. The planet's surface burned in clean lines, targeting only military bases and supply stations. Civilian zones were untouched. It wasn't just destruction. It was a message. Earth had not attacked out of rage. They had attacked with purpose, with cold control. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. Videos of the battle, captured from distant satellites, showed massive human ships moving through fire like silent giants, unstoppable and calm. The Council's leaders gathered again, this time with worried faces and shaky voices. How could they build this? How could we not see? The truth was simple. While the Council laughed and ruled, Earth had been watching. While others played politics, Earth had been preparing. They had studied every empire, every weakness, and built something the galaxy had never seen: warships, not for battle, but for dominance. In silence, Earth had created dreadnoughts that could end wars in minutes. The fear grew deeper when people realized Earth hadn't declared war. They hadn't taken land. They hadn't asked for surrender. They had only responded to disrespect. And they had done so with terrifying precision. No one knew where the dreadnoughts were now. Some said they were heading for the Council's homeworld. Others said they had already arrived and were simply waiting. In every corner of the galaxy, from small moons to mighty capitals, one question echoed. What happens when Earth stops being silent? And with that, the silence that followed the destruction of Ryak Prime, was louder than any explosion. Across the galaxy, every major power fell into deep panic, yet no one dared to speak openly. The images from the battle spread fast, showing human dreadnoughts moving like black shadows across the stars, destroying entire fleets with terrifying ease. No one could believe that a planet as heavily defended as Ryak Prime had been wiped out in less than 10 minutes. The Galactic Council, once proud and fearless, now sat in emergency meetings every hour, their voices low, their confidence shattered. They sent scouts and drones to learn more about Earth's weapons, but everything they sent vanished without a trace. No signal returned. No black box was recovered. It was as if the shadows themselves had swallowed them. Then, the second target was hit: Dravik 7, a planet known for building warships and advanced weapons. It never stood a chance. The dreadnoughts appeared without warning, blocked all signals in the system, and destroyed every military installation from orbit. The factories exploded in massive clouds of fire, lighting up the sky like artificial stars. But again, the civilians were left unharmed. That was the most chilling part. Earth didn't attack for pleasure. They attacked only what mattered. Their strikes were cold, clean, and perfect. The galaxy was not used to this kind of war. Every empire had fought battles, but they were messy, loud, and slow. Armies clashed, cities were taken, and peace deals were always full of conditions. But Earth's dreadnoughts did not ask for peace or surrender. They made no speeches. They arrived, they destroyed, and they vanished. Each attack was like a message calculated and impossible to ignore. Panic spread among smaller planets who once followed the Council's rule. Many began declaring neutrality, afraid they would be next. Others sent secret messages to Earth, begging not to be attacked. But Earth didn't respond. That silence became more terrifying than any war. Entire regions of space shut down their defenses out of fear that even activating them would attract attention. The Council scrambled to understand what they were facing. Spies were sent to Earth, but they never made it. Hackers tried to break into Terran networks, but their systems were too advanced. Earth's technology seemed to be at least a century ahead, and no one knew how they had built it so fast. The truth, however, was that Earth had been preparing for years while the galaxy mocked them. They quietly studied every alien ship, every battle, every strategy. They built their dreadnoughts, not as symbols of power, but as tools of precision war. These ships were massive, layered with armor that absorbed energy, covered in advanced stealth systems that made them invisible to most sensors, and armed with weapons that didn't rely on brute force, but on perfect timing and accuracy. One dreadnought alone could destroy an entire fleet, and they never traveled alone. When they attacked, they moved together like a dark cloud with a single mind, coordinated and unstoppable. After the destruction of 3 more councils, strongholds, the galaxy finally realized the truth: this wasn't a war. This was a message. Earth wasn't trying to conquer. They were simply showing the price of disrespect. A scientist from the Vexary Republic gave a name to what was happening: strategic silence. He explained in a broadcast that Earth's power didn't just come from their ships, but from their quiet control. They didn't need to shout. They didn't need to explain. Their silence spoke louder than words. The most feared thing in the galaxy was now the unknown next move of the Terran dreadnoughts. Some tried to fight back. The Ralvani Armada, the largest military fleet under the Council, gathered near the Zoran line to intercept the Terrans. They positioned over 100 capital ships, armed with thousands of smaller fighters and enough firepower to glass a planet. They believed their numbers would overwhelm the human fleet. But they were wrong. The dreadnoughts didn't fight the expected way. Instead of charging into battle, they split into smaller formations and attacked from different directions, using space itself as a weapon. They fired from ranges too far for the Ralvani sensors to track. Their weapons moved faster than light, bending around defenses and slicing through armor like paper. Within the first hour, the Ralvani lost half their fleet. The rest tried to flee, but the Terran ships blocked every exit. One by one, the Ralvani vessels were destroyed, and when the smoke cleared, the dreadnoughts were still untouched. It was then that the galaxy truly understood what they were facing: not just ships, but a force that could not be stopped. Earth had become something new, something terrifying. They were no longer the small, quiet planet begging for a seat in the Council. They were the storm that had arrived to end arrogance. After the battle, one of the few survivors of the Ralvani fleet sent a message before disappearing into deep space. They don't fight like us. They don't think like us. We are playing chess, and they are ending the game before we sit down. Fear turned into silence. The Council stopped sending orders. Entire sectors shut down. Colonies withdrew. Trade routes collapsed. No one wanted to attract attention. And through it all, the dreadnoughts kept moving. Their course was slow but steady. Everyone knew where they were going: Veltharion, the Council's homeworld. No one dared to speak of it, but everyone understood. Earth was coming, and nothing could stop them. They had struck first, not out of hate, but out of warning. They had proved that power does not always scream. Sometimes it arrives without a sound and leaves only fire behind. The dreadnoughts approached Veltharion like shadows creeping toward a fire, slow but unstoppable, and as they moved, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Veltharion, once the heart of the Galactic Council, was a world of golden towers, glowing skies, and vast military stations that hung in orbit like metal crowns. It had never known fear, never once imagined that someone could dare attack it, let alone reach its gates with such terrifying calm. The Council had always believed itself untouchable, the supreme voice in all galactic matters. But now, as the Terran fleet drew near, every screen in the central chamber showed black ships drifting through the stars, unreadable and cold. The Council members sat frozen, their once confident eyes now filled with dread. They whispered about old defense systems, ancient allies, hidden weapons, but deep inside, they all knew none of it mattered anymore. Earth had already destroyed the strongest fleets, crushed entire defense zones, and moved without resistance across space. Their weapons weren't just powerful, they were precise. Their ships didn't announce war, they delivered it, cold and complete. The Council sent diplomats, peace offers, promises of alliance, even apologies, but every message returned unanswered. Silence. That same silence that had become Earth's new language. The dreadnoughts didn't reply, didn't stop, didn't even slow down. One by one, systems near Veltharion fell dark as human forces passed through them, disabling fleets without bloodshed, turning off power grids without firing a shot, showing control not through destruction, but through perfect knowledge of every weak point. It was more terrifying than any open battle. Every general, every scientist, every strategist on Veltharion watched helplessly as the Terrans circled the planet. They could have launched a final attack, used the ancient energy cores buried beneath the capital, but they didn't. There was no point. Everyone knew what would happen if they resisted. Instead, something strange happened one by one. Ships powered down, stations went offline, and even the great planetary shield flickered and died. It wasn't a command. It wasn't an official surrender. It was quiet acceptance. The people of Veltharion had seen the pattern. Earth did not harm civilians. They only destroyed what needed to be destroyed. So if no one resisted, perhaps they would be spared. Fear and reason combined, and across the planet, weapons were dropped, defenses collapsed, and the grand cities prepared for the unknown. When the Terran dreadnoughts finally entered orbit, they didn't fire a single shot. They simply hovered, casting long shadows over the council buildings and military towers. And then, without a word, without a signal, one ship descended. Slowly, silently, it landed in the center of the council square, crushing the marble tiles that had once been walked by rulers who thought themselves gods. No ramp opened. No soldier stepped out. For hours, the ship remained still, like a dark monument. It wasn't a threat. It was a question. One by one, council members arrived, dressed not in power but in fear, their robes shaking, their voices gone. They stood before the ship, waiting, not sure if they would be addressed or judged. And then, at last, the ship spoke, not with sound, but with light. A hologram formed above it, showing images of Ryak Prime, Dravik 7, and every system that had once dared to insult Earth. The message was clear. This is what happens when warnings are ignored. The next image was Earth, peaceful and blue, quiet in its orbit, not asking for tribute or rule. Just silence. The council understood. This was not conquest. It was balance. Earth didn't want power over others. It wanted space to breathe and a galaxy that understood the price of arrogance. Without any formal ceremony, without paperwork or speeches, Veltharion surrendered, not with fanfare, but with silence. The council chamber was dissolved, its members stepping down not by vote but by fear. The military governors handed over control of weapons, not to Earth, but to the void. They simply powered down, removed their codes, and let things fall. A new era had begun, one not ruled by politics or force, but by the quiet presence of black ships watching from orbit. And then, just as silently as they had arrived, the dreadnoughts began to leave. They did not stay to occupy, did not demand tribute or install governors. They returned to the stars, their work complete. What they had come to destroy was not buildings or fleets, it was pride, arrogance, and the belief that Earth was weak. Across the galaxy, leaders watched this moment in disbelief. They expected Earth to take Veltharion for itself, to rule as the new power. But Earth did nothing of the sort. It left behind a message. Simple and final, respect is earned, and silence is the loudest warning. Planets that once laughed at Earth now taught Terran history in their schools. Former enemies studied human tactics not to fight them, but to understand how a silent species could defeat a galaxy with words unspoken. In trade zones, human ships were treated with honor. No longer were they scanned or searched. Their arrival brought not fear, but uneasy respect. And though Earth never joined the Council, its voice echoed louder than any law. The galaxy had changed. It had not been conquered, yet it had surrendered not through force, but through fear, precision, and the unstoppable weight of silence. The dreadnoughts had made their mark, not as destroyers, but as shadows of truth, and in the end, the galaxy finally understood. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who shouts, but the one who listens, prepares, and strikes only once. After the surrender of Veltharion, the heart of galactic power, silence spread across space like a quiet storm, heavy and unbroken, reaching every star system that had once believed Earth to be nothing more than a distant, backward world. But now, even in their silence, Earth held the loudest voice. The dreadnoughts had withdrawn into the dark regions of space, just outside the reach of the Council's old maps, leaving behind no armies, no threats, and no officials, only fear, confusion, and a lingering presence that made every leader second-guess their next word. No one knew what Earth wanted. They had destroyed nothing they did not have to. They had claimed no territory, no resources, no positions of power. They had not asked for tribute or obedience. They had simply appeared, ended resistance without effort, and vanished. But the galaxy was not at peace, not truly. Every system waited, holding its breath, expecting Earth to return with demands, waiting for the real conquest to begin. Yet no message came. No commands. Nothing. Until, one day, a strange object arrived in the orbit of Veltharion, drifting quietly like a messenger from the void. It was not a weapon, not a ship, but a black cube, unmarked and silent. The moment it was brought to the surface, it activated, projecting a single message in every known language of the galaxy: the war is over. These are the terms of peace. The Council remnants, those who still had influence after the surrender, gathered around it, waiting for threats or control. But the message continued, not with anger or arrogance, but with simple clarity. Earth did not seek to rule. It sought boundaries, space to live, to grow, to breathe, without being mocked, threatened, or attacked. The first term was respect. No system would interfere with Earth's inner space, not through ships, not through spies, not through propaganda or trade manipulation. The second was neutrality. Earth would not involve itself in foreign wars, but neither would it allow any war to come near its borders. Any violation would be met with silence and then correction. The third term was observation. A single human ship would visit each capital, not to rule, but to learn, to understand, to record. No one was to interfere. These ships would not speak, would not answer questions, but their presence meant Earth was watching. The final term was memory. Every school, every academy, every leadership program in the galaxy was required to teach what happened: the warning, the strike, and the silent surrender. Not as a threat, but as truth. No names were erased, no histories rewritten. Earth did not demand shame or flattery. Only facts. The cube's message ended there. It offered no punishment, no negotiation, only a path forward. The Council was stunned. No one had expected such terms. They had prepared for occupation, submission, slavery, but what they received was something harder to understand: discipline without chains, control without hands. And that confusion quickly turned into something unfamiliar: respect. Across the galaxy, system by system, the terms were accepted. Some out of fear, some out of hope, but all with a deep realization that Earth was no longer just a world. It was a presence. A force that would not play games, would not bend to the old politics of control and corruption. Leaders began adjusting their policies without being asked. Border patrols near Earth's space were disbanded. Old intelligence programs were shut down. Propaganda broadcasts that mocked humans vanished overnight. Not because of any direct order, but because everyone understood what silence now meant. In the distant corners of the galaxy, where pirates and warlords had once thrived, new codes of honor appeared, modeled after Earth's terrifying discipline. Mercenary fleets that once preyed on weak systems now avoided Earth's trade lanes as if they were cursed. Even species that had never cared about politics, the independent AI clusters, the nomadic biofleets, the isolated crystal mines, took notice. Earth, without demanding anything, had reset the balance. Yet not everything was quiet. In secret corners of space, some still plotted. A few believed Earth's silence was weakness in disguise, that they could reverse this shift if only they struck fast enough. They built new weapons, smarter systems, and called back the most dangerous thinkers of their time. But even as they planned, a strange pattern emerged. Every major figure involved in such plans would vanish: no battles, no noise, just gone. Their ships found drifting, their codes erased. And in every case, a simple note was left behind: peace is not silence. Peace is a choice. Soon, even the rebels stopped. Earth never claimed victory. It simply removed options until peace became the only answer. Meanwhile, Earth's observation ships began arriving in different capitals: small, sleek, dark vessels that docked without a word, stayed for a few days, then left. No one dared interfere. No one asked questions. Those who tried to approach the ships found themselves unable to speak, as if their own voices were swallowed by space. But every time one left, something changed. A violent leader stepped down. A corrupt official vanished. a warlord surrendered. It was as if the presence of those ships revealed the truth of every soul nearby. Earth wasn't policing the galaxy, it was waking it up. Generations later, the story of the terms of peace was still told. Not as a warning, but as a lesson. Not just about power, but about restraint. Earth had the strength to burn the stars, yet chose not to. That choice became the foundation of a new kind of order. Not built through conquest, but through consequence. And though humans returned to their world, seemingly uninterested in ruling others, their shadow remained a quiet reminder written in every language: respect the silent, for they speak in actions. The galaxy, once ruled by voices and pride, now followed the example of the one who said the least. And in that silence, true peace was born. Years passed like drifting stardust, slow but steady, and though the galaxy moved forward, it never forgot the moment it stood still in the shadow of Earth's dreadnoughts. The great war councils that once held endless debates were now quiet, their chambers filled more with history than strategy. The once powerful empires that had mocked humanity now spoke of Earth with caution and deep respect, for everyone still remembered the day when planets surrendered without fire, when entire fleets were reduced to silence by a single message, and when fear turned into understanding. No new war had reached Earth's borders, and no system dared to test the quiet patience of the humans. Their ships still traveled the stars, but not for invasion or control. They moved like watchers, observers, reminders of the past. Every starport, every academy, and every major archive now included one chapter that was never skipped: the story of the final warning, the first strike, the silent surrender, the terms of peace, and the legacy that followed. Children of many species grew up learning about Earth, not as monsters or saviors, but as the turning point, the moment when the galaxy learned that true power was not in noise, but in discipline. And still, no one truly understood how humans had done it. Their dreadnoughts were like ghosts now, unseen but never forgotten. Their technology, unmatched. Their strategy, unpredictable. Some believed it was their strange biology. Others said it was their emotions, their ability to suffer, endure, and still rise stronger. But deep down, every species knew that what made Earth dangerous was not its weapons or ships. It was the will of its people. They fought not for control, but to never be mocked again. That memory burned brighter than any war. Across the galaxy, museums displayed the images of Earth's ships, orbiting Veltharion like silent giants. Poets wrote about the silence that followed the surrender, and old veterans who had once feared Earth now told their grandchildren that it was Earth who saved them from themselves. Slowly, even the most isolated races started to change. Empires softened. Borders relaxed. Instead of fear, there was caution. Instead of hatred, there was curiosity. A few brave diplomats even visited Earth, walking on its green lands, expecting towering structures and weapon factories. But what they saw was different: simple cities, peaceful farms, people laughing under the stars. Earth had not turned into a fortress. It had returned to being a home. And yet, every human they met carried a quiet strength, like a fire that had once burned wild, but now waited in silence. The visitors understood, without words, that this peace was not weakness, it was a choice. The galaxy had learned, and now it remembered. Each year, on the day of surrender, systems lit up beacons in space not to celebrate defeat, but to honor survival. The unity that came after fear had saved more lives than any treaty before. And even though some still whispered about resisting Earth one day, no serious attempt had ever risen again. Because those who planned in the shadows always disappeared before they could act, leaving only the echo of a warning: peace is a choice. So is silence. This was now more than history. It was tradition. Leaders quoted the terms of peace in speeches. Young soldiers were taught Earth's doctrine of restraint. Even mercenaries, once wild and cruel, operated with quiet rules shaped by fear and respect. Across every sector, from the floating cities of gas giants to the hollow moons filled with AI minds, there was an understanding that Earth didn't ask to rule. It asked to be left alone, and proved what happened when it wasn't. The most powerful symbol of this new age was not a weapon or flag, It was a monument built at the center of the galaxy, a great structure shaped like a silent cube, surrounded by the names of all the worlds that once stood against Earth and later accepted peace. No words were carved from Earth's side. They never sent artists, never approved the design. The galaxy built it on its own, as a memory, as a warning, and as a reminder. Travelers came from all corners to stand before it and feel the weight of what silence had done. Some cried, some prayed, some simply stood still, thinking about the cost of pride. And even now, no one knew where Earth's dreadnoughts waited. Some believed they had returned to Sol, hidden deep within human space, guarding a world that no longer needed to speak. Others believed they drifted through the void, unseen and watching, ready to return only if the peace was broken. But most believed this: Earth would never strike first again, but if provoked, they would strike last. That thought kept the stars quiet. And so, the galaxy remembered not just the fear, but the change. Not just the silence, but the lesson. Earth had taught them all something powerful, that peace was not weakness, that silence was not surrender, and that history could be written without blood, if only you listened before it was too late. That was the legacy of the dreadnoughts, of the humans who unleashed hell only once and never needed to do it again. And though the stars were full of voices once more, none spoke too loudly, for they knew the silent ones were still listening. Somewhere in the dark,